Hello and welcome to this week's episode, which is 560 of Security Weekly News on March 3rd, 2026. This week, L&K files are back again, never went away. North Korea is walking malware all over USB into air-gapped boxes. AP28 chaining MS HTML into Windows Shell, and AI agents doing bad shit on your laptop, and my lovely assistant, Josh Marpet. All that and more, including Iran and more Iran, on this week's edition of Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software, deployment, and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny at execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold. Trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/threatlocker.
Okay, welcome back. Advert. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on RSA 2026 All Access Pass. I hope that means that you get to meet Josh. RSA 2026 conference will take place on March 23rd to March 26th in San Francisco. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSA 26 and use the code 56 U5 SEC WEEKLY exclamation mark. I'll put it in the show notes. We hope to see you there. All right, it's Tuesday, 3rd of March, 2026. And today, there's going to be 7 or 8 stories, depending on how fast I can talk and, more importantly, how fast Josh can talk. So, yeah, Josh, let's go. Story 1. Korea, APT 37, Scarcroft Ruby Sleet, whatever alias you're using this week. Korea, North Korea, the bad one. Can I say that? The bad one. This week, in Security Week, the reporting that underlying research was published by Zscaler on the 26th of February, and the campaign spotted way back in December 2025. Like, how much has the world changed in 2 months? It's like, it was only my birthday recently. I don't even know if I'm going to make another one. So, proper built out tool chain, new stuff in the kit, 5 newly documented tools built specifically to move across an air gap using removable media. Look, it's like, I used to think when I was but a young boy that, like, an air gap, how do you get across an air gap? But I guess the idea is someone sticks something in and pulls it out and sticks something back in and pulls it out. And Josh is showing me some air stuff. So,
phone, a USB drive.
yeah.
Pushing in and pulling out maybe a different connotation there.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. So, actually, in defense, where some people on Security Weekly Productions used to work, they still have air gap networks. Critical infrastructure used to kind of sort of have air gapped until they stuck them all in the internet. Labs, OT enclaves, and some finance things. But then, as Josh was just flinging his phone at me and waving at me, but it's like I couldn't see. You have the humans doing the file transfer, right? The human is the bridge. They weaponize the bridge and it turns the USB drive into a bilateral relay, not just a one-way drop. It's like what they're using, and it's like every time I hear LNK, I just think like Natanz, and it's like everything's just all Iran and nuclear reactors and, well, no centrifuges, spinny, not blowy. It's like that was so my favorite hack of all time, just like all them 0 days. But basically, it uses LNK as the container. Zscaler talked about this, and they just have like a decoy doc and a batch file and some PowerShell and a shell code. And they just whack it all on, and then it becomes sort of bi-directional. It's like, it's all pretty cool, to be honest, but it actually holds persistence. Commands go in, data comes out, and you stick it in, and it just, it's like pretty damn scary. And like, where did it come from? Where did they learn that? But anyway, look, APT 37 are treating removable media as a network layer, like a message bus, and they're doing it with a mix of cloud C2 and endpoint persistence. And like, this is hard to defend against. You just literally need to go on your LLM and Google how to do that, and then it'll show you. But anyway, over the APT 28, which is Fancy Bear, which is some Russians. MS HTML security feature bypass that was exploited in the wild before Microsoft fixed it in February on Patch Tuesday. Hacker News was the first story I read this on yesterday. And look, Internet Explorer, like, you're like, oh my God, what? I don't even use that anymore, but it's like got components embedded like in there deep. And what the write-up talked about, and the important bit, is that it just lives in MS HTML's handling of hyperlink navigation in the logic, i.e. frame.dll. Do you remember that one? And the issue is insufficient validation on the target URL. Look, in plain terms, attacker content gets Windows shell to do something it shouldn't outside the expected browser security context. So just like what Internet Explorer was made for, right? And it's like, I don't know, you remove Internet Explorer, super great. You maybe probably didn't remove MS HTML. And there's LNKs involved in there. It's human driven as well. There's phishing pipelines and legacy engines embedded all over Windows, because I don't think they like to get rid of code, because I think things kind of break. Okay, next story. Let's keep the nation state theme, because the world's gone a bit awkward at the moment. But from endpoints to developer supply chain, and back to North Korea, contiguous interview ecosystem, developers as targets, NPM as the delivery platform, and some pretty neat tradecraft in the middle. So Socket published the primary research on the 27th February and tracked a campaign they're calling Stegabin, because it's not got a stegosaurus. It's got like steganography, and I prefer dinosaurs. Imagine putting your code inside a dinosaur in its DNA, and then, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. Okay, headline, 26 malicious NPM packages published over about 2 days. The goal, a multi-stage credential and secret harvesting operation targeting developers. because you know what? Most devs I know don't know anything about security. They just know about code, bad code, all the code, no security code. But anyway, don't hate on me. Not consumers, not randoms, developers. But if you own dev, you get source, CI/CD tokens, crowd credentials, signing keys, and you're just absolutely all over the place. It's like, whoever thought that we'd still be talking about things dropping on the pastebin, but it uses pastebin as a dead drop resolver. They hide infrastructure inside what looks like normal text using character level steganography. And then you don't just grep for the HTTP. You don't just look for obvious base 64, because I bet you can all just read that now. Like I can read octal. You got a payload, control, data hidden in how characters are placed. So this socket also observed 31 virtual deployments used as staging infrastructure. It's like NPM calls a sketchy IP. It's not that. It's more NPM calls something that looks like developer tooling and hosting. And it's just meant to look like it's meant to be there, isn't it? It's like, look, the code reaches out to pastebin, decodes the stego, and then its next stage instructions, then it can go harvesting environment variables, tokens, secrets sitting in dot files, potential browser stored credits. It's like, look, get secrets, gets access, pivot. It's quite bad, right? And we talk about shift left, and if we don't shift left without securing left, and it's not called DevOps anymore, it's like DevSecOps. So maybe do some of that stuff. Okay, right. I don't even know what time it is anymore because I broke my microphone and had to borrow one. Thanks, person that I borrowed my headset from. I hope you can still take calls and stuff. Okay, story 4. Let's move fast. Clawjacked, OpenClaw. Claw. I see you, Josh. Thanks for the update. But I don't know what time I start at. 5 minutes late? 10 minutes late? I don't know. Doug likes to do this show for 40 minutes. Sam says we can only do it for 30. I don't know. Maybe we'll break the record, or maybe I'll just shut up and talk cyber. Okay, right. OpenClaw, Clawjacked, whatever it's called. It probably changed its name since I wrote this yesterday. Right. A local AI agent platform that's blown up in popularity. That's OpenClaw. Look, it's I've never seen so many vulnerabilities in one piece of functionality or software or app or whatever we want to call it. LLM that does cool stuff. And it does do cool stuff, but because it does cool stuff, and because AI LLMs are just the Wild West of banging in sort of controls and guardrails, and people just going, I'll just walk around your guardrail, and don't get me started. But look, step 1, a malicious page opens a WebSocket to the OpenClaw gateway on localhost. That's the bit. Cross-origin policies don't stop it. Step 2, brute force. It's why didn't you have rate limiting stuff and lockouts? But anyway, it's because it thinks it's localhost, right? So it doesn't need it. The gateway password can be brute forced at speed because rate limiting is missing or explicitly exempted for localhost connections. So the attacker hammers it. And then once it's authenticated, the malicious page registers as a trust device and then becomes the gateway, auto approves device pairing from localhost with no user prompt. And then persistent control, no pop-ups, no do you trust this device, nothing, just pwned. And then from there, whatever the agent can do. And look, these agents are pretty cool. You just need to, I get lost in a rabbit hole of what people are doing with this. But basically, it can probably read your local files, run commands, access your tokens, talk to SaaS. And there's just going to be data theft, credential theft, and straight up path code, the local code execution. It's the bad stuff. It's the cool stuff. And it's like hacking started all over again. It's like hacking kind of sort of maybe got a bit hard for a while. And then they brought out LLMs, and it's just like I don't know, I could start hacking again, maybe even as a job. Okay, right, let's move on. Story 5, cloud, Google API keys, the ALSA keys. These things people have historically embedded in client-side code for stuff like maps, YouTube embeds, Firebase, usage tracking. Researchers scanning way back in November, Common Crawl dataset found more than 2,800 live Google API keys exposed publicly in page sources across lots of sectors. Look, these API keys, they were acting as billing identifiers or low risk tokens for specific services. And then you get some privilege expansion, and it could just like hit endpoints, list models, and depending on how the project is configured, access data or run up usage charges and spend loads of money can then just become like single service privilege escalation. And that's what it talks about. It's not just limited to websites. It's like these keys are exposed and they're being scanned and people can find them, and it's pretty bad. Okay, I'm going to dip into this story really gently. Story 6, the Pentagon designating Anthropic as a supply chain risk. Basically, they wanted it to do something, and then they said that they couldn't do something, so they decided to part amicably-ish about it. But I guess what this story comes down to, right, is in the war, in the battle, in the cyber war, in the gray area with very large adversaries from very big countries that are like friendly and not friendly to us, is the need for speed better than the need for security? Or, as we read in the news this week, LLMs wanting to put their fingers on the nukes and 95% of the time just blowing us up? I guess my take on this, as I cover my eyes and put my hands on my temples, is I think some of them big adversaries, China and stuff, have the guardrails off in certain conditions and are just going super fast down the road to win the race, because if you get there first, you normally win. And maybe especially Europe have so many guardrails around these things, it's moving so slow. I think America's moving at a better pace, but I just think that we need to be careful not to start a nuclear war, because I think that could happen in other ways. But yeah, so the US Department, Story 7, sees 61 million worth of tether pig butchering. Like, if you're doing pig butchering, I wish you'd get butchered like a pig. And you're fucking horrible. Stop it. And the people that fall for it don't deserve it. Just go after like things that's white collar, and it's like, leave the little people alone. You're just horrible people. Anyway, over to Josh. Josh, give us some sense, please.
So I want to go back to your Anthropic story for just a second.
Go on. Do it.
And because I read some articles on this, and it turns out there are two conditions that Anthropic didn't want to do. And one was autonomous, no human in the loop release of weapons to kill people. They said, please don't use our stuff for that. I get. And the other one was, don't use our stuff for mass surveillance of American citizens and our allies. And you know what? I'm kind of good with that too. So they said, no, we will not sell to you if you're going to do those things. And the government is now designating them as a supply chain risk, when the Pentagon is continuing to use Anthropic currently, as I understand it. And I could be wrong, but that's what I'm given to understand. The Pentagon is still using it in the midst of it being designated a supply chain risk, which to me says it's not a supply chain risk. It is somebody being pissy. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so I want to get to my two stories. I try not to talk politics that often, but this
No, me
was
neither. But it's more about the guardrails, right? And it's more about just setting
so.
things free.
AI guardrails are fascinating because one of the things is you have to understand that we're all going for is to give AI the tools it needs to do the jobs that we can have it do. Now, in certain cases, this is wonderful, and in certain cases, this is horrible. And I hate to say it, but we're in the cusp of effectively another industrial revolution, in this case, the AI revolution, whereby a significant number of people, something like 1.2-ish million in the US, were laid off last year, some of which at least were laid off due to AI replacing their jobs. As a matter of fact, I had to talk even before the show started with a lovely young lady whose spouse is working on being a financial advisor. And I had to tell her, I'm really sorry, but those jobs don't really exist anymore. And it's really difficult. And I've offered to help in any way that I can, because I find it horrifying that we're leaving jobs that actually take care of people, like personal financial advisors, as buggy whip makers, if you remember the Industrial Revolution and that kind of thing. So it's a terrible and also amazing thing that we're doing. But when you take the guardrails off, you open it up to even more jobs, even more things, and eventually AGI, which is basically strong AI or digital people. Now, I'm the first one that wants to see digital people come around because I'm fascinated to see what happens there. I'm also fascinated to see if we can upload our consciousness. If we can figure out what consciousness is, can we upload ourselves? And I'm like, that's kind of cool. So I'm all for it, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, let me talk about my stories because I am watching the clock, which by the way is right at the top of the screen if you've got it full screened. And so I've got a few minutes. This is great. So I'm going to do just a couple of minutes. I've got two stories today, one of which is just about several breaches that happened. And the breach in particular is the ODIDO. And I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but ODIDO. And the big problem here is that it impacted 6 million customers because of a customer data environment that a third-party supplier was using that they had unauthorized access to, or some form of unauthorized access. And the core telecom network wasn't compromised, but the customer information stored in connected systems was exposed. I'm sure that those 6 million customers are totally happy that the core telecom network wasn't compromised, but I'm also sure that they're not entirely pleased that their information went bye-bye, okay, and was copied. In the same vein, with third-party suppliers being a real problem, I've got my second story, which is about the EU launching a whole new toolbox to strengthen ICT supply chain security. Okay, so this is supply chain security for connected devices, effectively. In this case, they have risk, what do they call them? Risk scenarios, I guess, risk assessments for connected and automated vehicles and detection equipment used at borders and customs. So what they said was, hey, here's a toolbox of tools to check your vendors, to check your suppliers, to check your entire supply chain. We have example scenarios of how to use them if you're working with connected and automated vehicles and detection equipment. Now, on a personal note, I've been working with the TIPS group. The TIPS group is the based out of IEEE 2933, and it stands for Trust, Identity, Privacy, Protection, Safety, and Security, TIPPSS. And they're all about clinical IoT. 2933 is about clinical IoT, but it's being expanded to energy groups and energy instances, basically everything IoT, everything connected, everything embedded. This is really cool. But all of that has huge amounts of supply chains. When you have a connected vehicle like this new EU toolbox is outlining, where are all the components from? Dear God, they're from everywhere. From China, you've got the NAND chips. From South Korea, you've got some of the lithography for the actual CPUs and everything else. There's so much monstrous supply chains for all these connected vehicles. You have to know, hey, was that NAND chip that's in your BMW, did that sit on a dock in Hong Kong or in Shanghai for 6 weeks, and we don't know where the boxes went for a couple of weeks? And weirdly enough, there's that building nearby that nobody will tell us what it's for. I don't know why. Just saying. So we've got to be able to track these things. And Alan Friedman's working on hardware bill of materials. I worked with the Linux Foundation on software bill of materials, and I interviewed Steve Springett for Cyber Risk Alliance at OWASP AppSec Global about Cyclone DX, which is another software bill of materials. These provenance tools, as well as the TIPS framework and the toolbox that the EU member states are bringing out, are incredibly powerful tools that we need to use in order to get continuous vendor risk visibility, management, and quantification. So, and one of the things I'm doing is I'm working on a framework on how to do all of that across every kind of supply chain. So I'm kind of proud of that. That'll be coming out probably in a couple of months. I'm waiting to hear if I've got accepted to a pitch competition in Japan. And the point is that if we're not doing vendor risk management on a continuous basis, you're not doing it right. You can't protect and you can't secure what you only check on once a year. So these kinds of operations, these kinds of ideas, these kinds of systems are really needed. Aaron, how often do you get a pen test at any place you've ever worked? Once a year, right?
Oh, no, I can't say that because I work at a cool place. We have a full 12-month program of cycling through pen tests twice and having the second pen test done by a separate company. It's like I work in finance. We have tons of cash. We do this properly. And
that's the way it should be done.
And you know what? I wouldn't like to turn around and put on my CV that I got sacked because we got hacked because I didn't do pen testing properly.
Just saying, nobody wants to be on the front street of the Wall Street Journal. Nobody wants to be on the front page of the Financial Times. No. So we have to do these things properly. It is coming to a close, the era where the CISO should be termed the designated scapegoat. We shouldn't be calling them that anymore. They should have longer terms in order to get things done. They're not just there to be thrown away at the first problem that happens. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox, I promise. But I think that this is an important factor. And when we have these, we're going to see a significant increase in security, compliance, and where they work together, because compliance is just making sure that security is doing what it says it's doing. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you. I actually worry about third-party risk management and supply chain every single day, and worrying about how, rather than just getting people to answer a questionnaire, is I can actually test their controls and actually see something tangible about what they're actually doing, because SOC reports and ISAE and even ISO 27001, it all depends on your auditor, right? And okay, right. Thanks, Josh. It's good to see you and your lovely beard. So,
And
a
your
lot of stuff's happening. Thank you. A lot of stuff's happening in Iran at the moment, right? But there's lots of bombs and stuff. And to be honest, after so many years, like working in an environment with bombs and stuff, it's like I'd rather not see any more bombs and stuff. But for us that now work in cyber and not bombs, it's been really interesting about what's been officially acknowledged and then what's been sort of corroborated across multi-independent monitors this week and sort of open source stuff. But I guess it all started when like Venezuela happened and they were like, there was some cyber stuff happened and some weird stuff. But look, this week, in the last couple of days, there's been cyber and space effects to disrupt communications and sensor networks supporting the opening wave of strikes. There's been cyber-enabled coercive messaging to the regime, and like straight in there, as deep as it can get, to the IRGC and security insiders, which they're calling direct, individualized outreach to prompt cooperation and defection. There was a near total national internet blackout inside Iran during the first 24 to 60 hours of the campaign. Disruption of state media and news portals. They were basically on the television telling them what was going on and what they'd like them to do. There was combined cyber and EWM measures to blind, fragment, and delay command and control. And there was synchronized influence ops framed to accelerate regime fracture. And this is where it starts. Like, you don't just hack something and sit inside, listen communications going inside. This was messaging time to kinetic effects, which is pretty crazy. We're talking about like compromise injection on pro-regime websites with moral degrading psyops content. There was the hijack of state TV segments to air leadership messages direct to the Iranian public. Because, of course, they closed the internet down themselves not that long ago, didn't they? And then app layer psychological operations, including pushes to soldiers and security personnel to surrender or defect. And just, well, when they shut the internet down, and it's meant to be like a closed internet, practically sort of there anyway. Maybe not on the Chinese level, but nationwide degradation of government digital services and popular local apps across major cities. This was full sector cyber warfare that was linked to the actual kinetic effects and warfare that was going on. So there you go. I can't remember how many stories I'd done, and Josh did too. So we're going to have to pay extra for production this week. Look, stop trusting defaults. Air gaps aren't magic, but I still like them. Localhost isn't a boundary. And Doug's still away, so we're still playing. And we'll see you Friday. And I'm going to try and talk faster, and Josh's going to talk faster. And, oh no, we're 50 seconds over. Cut that out. Goodbye, Cybers Party people. Sorry, Sam.